Alright, so we're talking about a graphing technique today. So the main idea of this is we want to take an algebraic expression or an algebraic equation and make a picture of it, make a graph of it, okay? And so the technique that we're going to be using today is by making a table. And the nice thing about this technique is that it always works. No matter what your expression or your equation looks like, you can always use this technique to make a picture of it, make a graph of it. The downside is it can be really time consuming. Okay, so let's get started. So the idea of making a table is, so construct a table like this where you choose values of x. Generally x is like the input into a function or an equation, and y is going to be what your output is from that equation. So we choose the values of x. This probably is the hardest part about making a table because you have to choose strategically values of x. For example, I wouldn't want to choose x equals 10 because when I choose x equals 10, it's not going to fit on my graph. X equals 10 is like way over there. So instead of choosing x equals 10, my favorite number to start with is 0. Usually it's the easiest one for computations, and it also is right in the center of the graph. So if I choose x equals 0 to begin, right? What will be the output from this function if I choose x equals 0? Well, what is 0 plus 2? So 0 plus 2 is going to be the output when we choose 0 as an input. 0 plus 2 is 2. So now we have our first point. When x is equal to 0, y is equal to 2. So this point is located when x is equal to 0, this is the x-axis, this is y-axis. When x is equal to 0, y is equal to 2. So we don't know what this thing looks like yet, but we know whatever it looks like and wherever it goes, it passes through that point right there. Okay, so now we just strategically choose other points around this one. Like -1 is a good one, 1, -2, and 2. Generally, it's a good idea. If your graph is going to be centered here by the origin, we call this place the origin, 0, 0 is the origin. If your graph is going to be centered around this place, generally it's a good idea to choose some negative numbers too, so you're seeing the left-hand side as well as the right-hand side. Okay, so let's start substituting these values for x into our function and see what values we get as outputs. So if x is -1, then we have -1 plus 2, which is equal to 1. And now we have a new point. We have the point -1, 1. We can write it like this, -1, 1. So the place -1, 1 is right here. -1 on the x-axis, 1 on the y-axis, right there. All right. If you're having trouble locating points on the coordinate plane, you can go back to a previous video that I think is called something like locating points on the coordinate plane. Okay, there's another video about that one. Okay, so if x is your input, then if 1 is your input into this function, then we have 1 plus 2, and this is equal to 3. So now we have the point 1, 3. 1, 3. -2 plus 2 is equal to 0. So now we have the point -2, 0. -2, 0 is right here. And finally here, 2. So if x is 2, then we have 2 plus 2, which is equal to 4. And so now we have the last point, 2, 4. 2, 4 is right here. And so if I've made my graph carefully and constructed it carefully, this will make a line. And it will look like this, if I can get it. Yeah, something like that. So this function happens to be linear, and that's how you use a table to make a graph of any function.